As always, we are so happy to be here on another day to see you guys. Today is going to be a special day. I introduced my queen to you, and we're going to talk about some very topics that are concerning to us. But first, I want to say thank you, Queen, for being here tonight.
You're welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, saints and ain'ts, boys and girls, welcome to the throne room, also known as the Bigga Picture. How are you, Your Grace?
I'm doing great. Every day, God wakes me up to look at your beautiful face, to look at our home, to look at everything that we accomplished, where we came from. I could only be grateful. I could only thank God. I could only thank God because the world don't know, but you're my dream. You're my, 15 years old, we was together and you was my dream. I knew you was my queen the day I ever laid eyes on you. Everything I have done, everything I have accomplished has been for you and has been with you. I couldn't do anything that I'm doing right now without you. And I couldn't have accomplished anything that I have accomplished without you.
And I was divinely engineered for you, for this moment, for this date, and for the future.
And that's beautiful. And she talked me into sharing my story with you guys. I'm a very private person. I don't glorify my past. So as you see, Making of the Man is segments. So that is going to be coming later in the future. We're going to be breaking it up in segments. My queen explained to me that me doing that show and telling my story is going to save lives, is going to impact lives when it all plays out and you guys see. And I do believe that. But with that being said, our story does the same thing. It will change lives. It would hopefully impact relationships. You guys could know what love, period, what love is between two people. And with that being said, Queen, you have something that you want to talk about today.
Well, love is the highest level of understanding. I think love has now become almost like a unicorn. People don't believe in it anymore. They may have seen pictures of it. And I think some of the depictions that we're seeing, especially in popular culture, some authentic and some are non-official, non-authentic. There seems to be a lot of discussion about this table, the table. What is she bringing to the table? I don't recall Adam asking the Almighty, but what are you removing this thing from my rib? Is she bringing something to the table? It's absolutely ridiculous. The truth of the matter is, did you build the table, brother? Is your table made of oak or is it made of plywood? Or is it one of those plastic kickstands you get at Family Dollar? Let's talk about the table, honey. Have you been hearing about this table?
No, I was going to ask you to fill me in because I'm a little lost on the table talk and that whole thing. That's something trending now that they're
It's very
talking
much
about.
trending. I think that a lot of our single and fully grown citizens of the kingdom, some with children, some not. Some have spent a lot of their most vibrant and fertile years pursuing careers, particularly with women. A lot of sisters have gone the education route. Gold star to you. The American woman in particular, the Black American woman is the most educated woman in the world. This is a fact. This isn't a rumor. This isn't something that Oprah said or anyone else. This is a fact. Very educated, Some of them have had children before they started their path to higher education. Some didn't have the opportunity to have children. So now they're finding themselves seeking a partner, seeking a mate, seeking a soul connection, and struggling in that. I think the biggest struggle with that is there are a lot of brothers out there that are professional, that are seeking also a partnership. But I think they become jaded through their dating ventures. If you are 35 plus and you've been dating well since maybe 16, 17 years old, that's a lot of years of hosting auditions. Would you agree?
Yeah, I absolutely do. But again, I'm so thankful for the Lord for so many things because at our age, I couldn't imagine being single and playing that game right now.
Yeah, with
That,
arthritis and
yeah,
sciatica and your knees hurting and bedtimes getting earlier.
but
You really hitting the club knowing that, arthritis is kicking in. Sis, look at these stilettos. You know what I mean? I couldn't imagine hitting the club trying to be cute, 4 or 5 hours, and I know I got to get up and do a career, not a job, but a career. Same for the brothers, It's a phenomenon that is definitely impacting the building of families.
yeah, I think that again, me even imagining at this age or even at 35 to play that game with what's going on in society now. You don't even know a person. So, to meet someone at 35 or in their 30s, they've lived probably about 3 or 4 different lives that you don't even know. So that's very scary for me. But one of the things that on the men's side, that I have analyzed, and this is my position. And it's an unfortunate position for women. There are no single men that is 35,
You saying none?
No. If you have a man that is 35 years old, that is single, it's because he have chosen that. He doesn't want to be with no one. He likes the auditions, you know what I'm saying? And he's more settled with the auditions. He doesn't want no one. So that's one thing that I don't think women catch, that there's no single man at that. If you meet a man at that age and you didn't grow up with him, you don't have like real history with him and y'all are just meeting, it's not impossible, but I think the chances are highly slim, of finding a mate at that age.
We want to create hope, not hopelessness, right? You make it so grim. We're trying to create hope, like not hopelessness. I would say there is some truth to that. If you reach 35, 9 times out of 10, you're living on your own. 9 times out of 10, your personal space is of such high value. You are used to coming in. You're used to driving the car you want to drive. You're used to traveling. There's no one to answer to. And you have lived a significant amount of life. And that comes with you, okay? Your relationship style may be slightly toxic, just a little bit. And it's not because you're a toxic person, but you've made experience 3 to 10 breakups. Women's, there is a divine clock for women. I know because you see Janet Jackson coming with the baby at 50 plus. We don't know if Janet carried that baby. You got Halle Berry. She had a baby at 50 plus. Every now and then you may see a post on Facebook with a woman that is of advanced age that's having baby. But let's be absolutely clear here. There is a divine clock that was created. When a woman is born, she is born with every egg she will ever have in life. There's no replenishment of that. So we do not have the luxury of wasting youth and fertility on nonsense and plastic tables. A lot of women hold auditions for a significant amount of time. They've been auditioning the brother for 15 years. Now you 38, okay? He done moved on because he done heard, Puff and Young Miami. He's like, I could put the Ben Gay on my knee, get out there, get me a young girl. She don't want you neither, bruh. She don't want you. She just want to go shopping, but that's neither here nor there. But you've wasted all these young years. And now you're like, what am I going to do? So you hit the club. You meet the brother that just came home. You know what I mean? His body is kind of buffed out. He done read a lot of books. He may even have, the glasses on, looking a little intelligent. He is a hobosexual. He is looking for a residence, sis. He don't want you. Trust me. And if you got daughters, be smart. He looking at your daughter, honey. Wouldn't you agree?
That's kind of deep right there, but you hit on so many points with that right there. For one, couples should not live together that are not married. That is against the scripture. As we understand, the scripture speaks on that. If you are in the house, you should be married. So I think what happens in a lot of these relationships is that you move these people in and you're looking in hopes for that day to gain marriage or gain this, but it's like once you move a person in, it's like the marriage part has been skipped. And now the audition is happening in-house, because if you have a guy living with you, a man living with you, or a woman living with you, and y'all haven't agreed to get married, and this have taken place for years, what is that? What is that? Just he feel that he is in a position. Does she feel that she's in a position that they could walk away? Do they have the same? People that are married, it's just not that simple, as you know. We just can't walk away from each other. It's just not that simple. But is it that simple when it's just a boyfriend and girlfriend living together? And not to get off the original topic that you said about bringing to the table. I didn't hear it on YouTube, but that is an interesting factor. Women bring themselves. They're not required to. So how this all worked out was when the original king and queen fell into sin, they received punishment from their father. Some call it a curse. And the punishment that they received was that a man had to work the ground that he came from until his dying day. The food that he would eat from his sweat. So bring to the table. The table is completely brought to the table by the man. It is the man's responsibility to feed, take care of his family, protect his family. That was from the first king and first queen from the start. Now, why did God make a woman? God saw that it was not good for man to be alone. So he gave man a companion. He gave the king a queen, that while he wrestles through this world that some see as physical, but is really spiritual, as he is on his journey into his Christ-like, God has given him a queen as a helpmate, Now, that help was not to go out in the field and have to sweat. That was not her curse. Her punishment is that she will have children, and during her labor, she would be in pain. Her punishment is that between her child and the devil child, they will have a problem. You know what I'm saying? That would, and also that she would love her husband, and her love would be like overbearing to him, like, you know, what it, you know, she is submitting to him and he will rule over her. That was the punishment that God set on the first king and the first queen. So when we talk about bringing to the table, I don't know what that conversation really was, but if they're talking about a woman having a job and working and paying half the rent or half the mortgage or, you know, being responsible for half the bills, no, not quite so.
I think that's what the foundation of the table talk is. That's what I'm gonna call it. I'm gonna call it the table talk. There seems to be this concept that a relationship is almost like a roommate. You know, when you move in, when you're first starting out as a adult, a lot of times you will have a roommate, you know, to kind of split the expenses with you and kind of alleviate some of the pressures that come along with leaving the nest for the very first time. I'm a 70s baby. My king is a 70s baby. So we were thrusted into the world a lot earlier than the 90s babies. The 90s and the millennials have had the benefit of being able to stay home longer and live more childlike existences. Whereas in our generation, which is the first generation of hip hop, we were kind of thrust into the world very early. We had to make very adult decisions. It wasn't unusual for 13, 14, or even 15-year-old men to be paying rent. My husband was one of them. To have his own residence. My husband was one of them. To have a car, no license. My husband was one of them.
That's coming up later, guys. That's the part.
That was very, very common. And it wasn't because he was blessed to have a strong foundation of career-oriented parents, but he made other choices. My story was a little different. But yes, we were in the world living those lives. So when I hear younger people talk about, oh, you know, on the women's side, because gentlemen, I am not beating you up. I know with the sexy red and the whole Dusty Broad movement that's going on right now, it's getting kind of scary out there for you guys too. So I get it. But I can only speak to women, you know. I'm totally not in support of women telling men what to do, nor am I in support of men telling women what to do. I think that should be left to the elders. But ladies, you must, if you are even remotely interested in monogamy and an authentic foundation with a partner, with a husband, you have to start planning for that with the same diligence and tenacity that you do your careers. Sisters are doing their thing. They are coming out guns blazing with every degree that is possible to obtain. And that focus is not being placed on finding a partner. And I think those are both duly important, because if your career is everything that you've hoped it to be, but when you walk through the door, you wish your address was somewhere else, or your house partner, your partner was someone else, then that means you haven't really put the same diligence into that as well. And our answer to that is something that we're working on. We want to build families. We want to do a little matchmaking. We want to share what we have and what we've learned and what we experienced with the kingdom. So very soon, Most likely right around after the holidays, we're going to start taking applications. I mean, really applications. We're talking men, women, LBGT. We love you, but we just don't have the resources to service you guys right now. We just don't have the resources. But we do have the resources for our heteros right now. And we want to do some matchmaking. And that's going to include you submit your application. There's going to be a strict criteria. Health is going to be important. Mental health stability is going to be a factor. Residence. So if you're living in a shelter, you do not qualify. And that's men and women. If you're living with Nana, you don't qualify. If you have more than 2 parents for your children, you do not qualify. We're not trying to create mess, are we, honey? We're not trying to create mess. And that's mess. You know, if I had it my way, I would make all you multiples marry your multiples and all live in one residence so you could save us the food stamps and the Medicaid and all of that, because that's where that's all getting crazy at. Go ahead, honey, what you was going to say.
Yeah, that's definitely something we have that we're looking forward to do with you guys.
Absolutely.
And don't worry, no matter what state you're in, where you at, the king and queen is going to come there. And what we're going to do is when we first make the match will be at a dating place of our choice in your town and city, because we're not going to be matching someone that live, miles away, because that don't work either. So the people that we match up are going to live in the same vicinity. We're going to come to your town and we're going to go out and have a great time on the first date. So stay forward, stay tuned for that. That's going to be great.
That's going to be so great. And our goal is to have at least 5 couples, 6 months down the line, still together, still communicating. And we have a lot of networking that we want to put into action to make this happen. So that's definitely something that we have in store for you guys.
That's great. So now, moving right along, me and my queen are actually the children of hip hop. Our generation will be the actual babies of hip hop. So what we want to talk about now is where we're at with the state of hip hop. How do we feel about it? What did it do for us? And I'd like to speak to my queen, reigning from Bronx, New York, the home of hip hop, which let's start right with that almost. They say that is not the home of hip hop.
I've heard that
they say that is debated, that it's really
that's
Brooklyn,
running like
not
a freight train,
not the Bronx.
2 and the 5.
That
train
it's really
particular.
Brooklyn, and it wasn't Kool Herc. It was Flowers and Hollywood and these other people from Brooklyn. That it's really Brooklyn. You being the Bronx native that you are, how does that make you feel? I mean, do you have any feelings to that?
I think hip hop, I mean, with the 50th anniversary upon us, I think it has brought a conversation to the forefront that no one really talked about before. There was never a question that the Bronx was the hometown of hip hop until the 50th anniversary. And then you have so many challenges to the Bronx's claim on a genre that was almost destroyed. I don't think the millennial generation understands the fight to keep hip hop alive. There was a movement, an actual governmental engineered movement to stop hip hop in its infant tracks. There was congressional hearings being held about it. Shout out to Luke Skywalker, AKA Luke Campbell. If it wasn't for him fighting for the censorship and the freedom of speech for hip hop, we would have never got as far as we are right now.
Ice-T as well, honey.
Ice-T as well,
He had that
because when
song.
he did Cop
Yeah,
Killer,
the Cop Killer.
which was Scared America, you know. He fought, but I think there was a lot of intricate pieces that contributed to hip hop. And I think with the 50th anniversary, everyone wants to be recognized for their contributions. And we would love to recognize each and every B-boy, each and every B-girl, each and every DJ, each and every break dancer, each and every person that plugged in the damn plug in the light post. You know, unfortunately, we cannot. So doesn't mean that we don't recognize that it took a collaboration of many different moving parts for hip hop to get where it is. But make no mistake, the X is the home of hip hop. New York is the home of hip hop. I don't want to hear any more conversations about how it's a breakdown from ska and, you know, somewhere in a village, somewhere in the Caribbean, somebody was putting words together. Yes, 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 yes. However, I remember the precise moment I fell in love with hip hop. Shout out to Grandmaster Cash and Melly Mel and those brothers. It was The Message for me. And that was filmed in the X.
Amazing. That's a beautiful thing. You know, speaking about the X, how was it, you know, being that we talk about hip hop, how was it back then growing up in the X, coming from the home of hip hop?
Wow. Well, Jimmy Carter, who was the president of the United States at the time that hip hop was in its infancy stage, actually visited the Bronx, not too
The
far away.
president?
Yes, the president, Jimmy Carter. You guys could Google this, it's out there. And he came to the South Bronx in particular and declared it a war zone. He could not believe that in America that there were people living in such detrimental war-torn conditions. The Bronx was considered the armpit of New York City at that time. Abandoned
A
buildings.
lot of abandoned buildings.
Oh yeah. We were called the burnt down Bronx. I still get a little offended when I hear that. Just a little bit. But this is the home of hip hop, and that is why the music was such a direct reflection of that time. The Bronx was extremely crowded, extremely neglected. Every social ill and challenge you could think of was there. We are in the center of everything. Harlem is right next to us. Queens is right next to us. Brooklyn is a little farther away, but I always consider Brooklyn the Bronx's crazy cousin. But it was a very almost surreal and traumatic time. Filthy. I mean, if you guys could just look at some of the footage of that time, it gives you an idea. The kids that really came together to make this, to give birth to this baby that we now call hip hop, they came from very, very, very detrimental foundation. And to hear now those forefathers having to still live in conditions or to have not received the financial, what's the right word, honey? The financial benefits that we're seeing younger artists receive now, I think is really something that needs to be a discussion with the 50th year. I don't hear our very, very well off, multi-millionaire artists coming together and saying, what can we do for the forefathers? How do we correct a whole generation of wrongs? Is there a universal health care that we could possibly all contribute to. So something like what as we've seen happen to a Black Rob, rest in power.
Yes, definitely. Black Rob from Harlem, friend of mine.
And so many others that pretty much met their end without any resources, without adequate health care, without adequate housing, unable to take care of themselves or their children. I think that is a conversation for the 50th anniversary that is not happening and should be happening.
I know that when I was on one of the last shows that I was on, this topic came up. And it was a very controversial topic. I know that a lot of people had a lot of comments on what I said on that one. So it's a few things I wanted to clear with that. So LL Cool J, for the Rock the Bells, he gave them, I got the phone call that he actually, for the people that performed at Rock the Bells, he gave them incentive into Rock the Bells company.
That's beautiful.
I thought that's
beautiful.
absolutely beautiful. So shout out to LL Cool J. You know,
Ladies
I've already
love Cool J.
Yes, I've already explained to y'all that's a part of me. I'm LL too now. But you know, yes, big shout out to that. I'm not sure what Nas did with MC Shan. I saw something, and I saw MC Shan saying that, all right, he's okay with Nas right now, and he's good, but you know, and I'm just, I guess, let's, you know, we need to, you know, see it. But again, this was what happened on My Expert Opinion that bothered me. MC Shan saying with Nas on the thing, you know, I'm good, we good now, we all right now with no teeth in his mouth. So I guess maybe Nas paid for his new teeth or something and they just didn't film, you know, at that moment or something. But I don't know that. I'm saying that that's what I would hope because, again, he's standing next to Nas and he's saying, you know, I'm good now, you know, we good now, but no teeth. And I thought that was, again, you know, teeth is the least of it. It's old school rappers out there in hospitals right now dying. You know what I'm saying? That we don't see that. Their health is so bad, they wasn't a part of the 50 years because they couldn't get on stage. They couldn't perform. They're sick. They're in nursing homes right now and they're only 60-some years old and they're dying because their health is bad because they probably lived the hip hop life, you know? So that's very concerning. I think that I can't, for the life of me, understand how do we have rappers that live in $30 million homes, but we have the people who started hip hop still living in tenement buildings, you know, still living in the projects. I'm not understanding that part. I'm not understanding how we have all of these successful rappers that brag about the diamonds and the jewelry and the money and all these millions. But again, we have MCs that started it, that laid the foundation. And their situation is not so great. Not great at all. It's actually very bad. So that is very concerning to me. And speaking about that, these rappers and celebrities, you brag so much about money and diamonds and jewelry and all of this other stuff. Please tell me, why do we have any poverty in any inner city? Please explain that to me. Please explain to me why the youth is still feeling like they gotta pull fake jacks to come up. But you guys go on these podcasts. I had to sit there for 3 years and watch y'all come on there and talk this money talk, which I knew was lies. Most of you was talking. But I had to sit there and endure you guys talk this nonsense about jewelry, money, and you know, all of this stuff. But if you same guys, celebrities included, sports players included, just got together and put in just 5% of these millions that you brag about, answer my question. Why do we have any poverty in any inner city? You guys are despicable when it comes to that. We need to figure out a way that we put ourselves in power. And how are we going to put ourselves in power if we keep getting on these platforms and we keep talking about taking our money and giving it right back to the enemy, something that is not a part of this culture that you come from, something that has nothing to do with the plight of hip hop, the plight of those same inner city kids in the community.
I think many of the artists, the athletes, and those who have excelled beyond their humble beginnings of where they may have been living in poverty or even a part of the middle class, I think for our culture in particular in hip hop, I think that we anticipate some form of giving back. You don't hear that language spoken in R&B. You don't hear that language spoken so much in the rock genre. You don't hear that language discussed in gospel or even country western. Some of the country western stars come from very, very impoverished and rural communities. And there's very little discussion about what they do once they get out. Do they come back? Do they go to, the elementary school that they were in? Do they pull their resources together and create an institution, an independent institution that the community from which they derive from can utilize? I think in hip hop in particular, because of the history and the FBA foundation, that yes, that is the conversation. And that's because hip hop is so grounded in FBA and Caribbean culture that there is still that disconnect. How do we create our own institutions based off of the financial resources and glow up that we're experiencing generation after generation? And I think that's what differentiates the hip hop pay forward conversation versus the heavy metal or the country western conversation, because they don't think about paying forward anything. And if they do, it's not expected. It's just like, oh, that's really nice. Garth Brooks, visited his old elementary school and, gave out some book bags. For in hip hop in particular, when we hear about an artist going to the community and doing a coat drive or a book bag drive, we kind of hiss our teeth at it like, that's it? You know what I mean? You're wearing, $2.3 million worth of diamonds and you just gave out some book bags and, some ShopRite turkeys. There is such a need for us to establish our own institutions. And I think hip hop has made such tremendous amount of money and created generational wealth within pockets in the FBA and Caribbean and even in the Latino community, that we're like, okay, now what? How are we going to take those pockets and make it into an institution? And I think that's what you're talking about, that we haven't created any institutions with the wealth that we are experiencing now.
Absolutely.
We bought a lot of things.
Not only for hip hop, but for any impoverished people. It just, I don't think that I think if those who are in power, if we all was to share and care, there wouldn't be no poverty on the world. You know what I'm saying? There wouldn't be. The reason why there's poverty and starvation and sickness is because there's people that are in power that are being greedy, you know, and they holding on because they want to have more than others, you know, and once you want to have more than others, it turns into almost a capitalist type thing. So you want to
We
have
are capitalists.
in a different way, though, you know.
America is built on capitalism. I mean, when you think about the infatuation with the criminal lifestyle, particularly in America, I think that people forget we were built off of criminality. The Boston Tea Party wasn't people making the waltz and, you know, making curtsies. It was, if you send another ship over here, it's lit. That's pretty much what happened. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't nice. It was, if you send one more ship, no taxation without representation is the most gangster saying you can say. You're basically saying, I'm not paying you. I don't care if you helped us get over here. We're not paying you. That's over. We're not paying you nothing. If we not represented over there, we're not paying you a nickel. That's what the foundation of America is built on. Now, we done won the war, okay? We got 400 years of free labor to create this empire, right? Of skilled labor. Let's not get that confused. Skilled labor for free, okay? Now, that is the drive of most Americans. We don't think of Americans. If you come from another country, whether that's the Caribbean, whether that's Europe, the collective is what you build with. But if you are born here in the States, there's a very individualized nature. I want what's coming to me and everything in it. That is the American way. And it's very difficult to get away from that. Yes, we want to help each other. Yes, we do have, as far as a human, yes, we have a human responsibility, a spiritual responsibility to take care of our fellow man. Yes, we do. But that drive of capitalism and that desire to have more than what you need is absolutely embedded in our societal spirits. I won't say in our soul, but our societal spirits here in the good old USA, particularly if you're in Rome, aka New York, aka LA, aka Chicago. That is what gets you out of the bed in the morning.
So what's the opposite of capitalism?
I guess it would be communism.
And what do you feel about communism? Do you feel maybe that's where it should be? Because that's something that I have always found very interesting because, and you could further explain this to me. So the scriptures, according to scriptures, this is how we should live. Everyone is to bring everything they have to the church. You know what I'm saying? Everything, I'm not supposed to have a house or a car of my own or anything of my own. Everything is supposed to be equal, share. So everything that you have, you are supposed to bring to the church. When you know, to the priest, the one, the head of the church, and that's taken and then it's put all together and then it's split up. Everything is split evenly with the people. So it is not, no one has what no one else has. Now, from my understanding, that sounds communism, but maybe you could explain to me, is that communism?
That's what the foundation of communism is based off of. Everyone receives a certain amount based on their family size, and that comes
Do you think
courtesy of the government. And doctors, teachers, police officers all receive the same per diem. They all receive the
do
same
you think
salary.
do you think the Bible is correct in that, and that we have
Well,
it
all
wrong
things in the
here?
Bible is
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah, we have it wrong. So as Americans, we have it wrong. I think what happened is, where the problem happened is with the disciples, because it broke down all the way back with the disciples. When the Christian movement started to flourish, you had people that became a part that were well-off people, you know? And you saw it actually in the story with Jesus when he was walking and the guy came up to him and said that he wanted to be his disciple. And Jesus says to him, okay, follow the commandments, you know? So he says to Jesus, oh, I did that. I follow the commandments. I do all of that, you know? I keep all the commandments, so I want to follow with you, go with you. So Jesus told him, okay, that's good. So what I want you to do is go take everything that you know, all your riches, you know what I'm saying, and give to the poor, and then come on and come with me. Jesus kept walking with
said-
the disciples. Yeah, Jesus kept walking with the disciples, and looked back, and Jude was standing there, you know, still
He's
stuck.
like, but I want to come, my Lord, but I can't.
Jesus looked at the disciples and said to the disciples, you see that what his problem was that he was a rich man. You know what I'm saying? He said, in order for a rich man to make it into heaven, it's like a camel making it through the eye of a needle. All right. There's times I have to explain scripture because it's a lot people don't understand. So when you hear Campbell making it through an eye of a needle, I know so many people in the world were like, well, that sounds crazy. How could a Campbell fit through a needle? You know, that's not what the scripture's talking about. So in that time in the Bible, in the towns, a needle would be the entrance to the town. They would call the entranceway a needle. And camel when the camel have to come through the needle of the town, the camel had to lower himself in order to get through the needle. So what Jesus was actually saying, in order for a rich man to make it into heaven, he would have to be able to lower himself. Most rich people are not able to lower themselves. So what happened at the time when the movement started to become big and flourish, that was a problem the disciples had. That same guy that came up to Jesus that wanted to follow, a lot of them came. You know what I'm saying? And the church was almost left, with, almost it's things that they almost had to, sort of kind of compromise or bend or look over, but that wasn't the original way it was supposed to be done. According to the disciples, everything was supposed to be brought to the altar, and everybody will live in accord after that. So that's how that goes. So now, with that said, you said some interesting things earlier that I have seen that has been a latest topic of controversy. And me and you have had this conversation so many times. I saw Special Ed on Drink Champs, and he said that something
Shout out
to
to
the
Drink
effect,
Champs.
shout out to Special Ed. He said something to the effect that NWA I don't want to misquote him, but something to the effect that NWA, was used as the tool of the destruction of hip hop. Now, I know you have a lot of feelings on that. I have a lot of feelings on that. What are your feelings on that? You feel special way?
The destruction of hip hop?
Yeah, that if I don't want to misquote him wrong, but basically, yeah, that's what he's saying. He's trying to say that NWA was the start of the downfall. NWA was the start of what we have now, of rappers killing themselves, of, all of this negativity in hip hop, all of everything that you see. He said NWA was actually used for that. He said they were used by the enemy to get us to where we are at in current hip hop now. So the world understand, we are the babies again of hip hop. So as she could explain to you, we didn't grow up with NWA hip hop. And the hip hop that we grew up under, if I was a rapper, and if I would have ever thought back then when I was a little kid, I could go up to the older guys and start busting around talking about, yeah, shot this nigga and roll this nigga and sell this drug. They'd have kicked me in my butt and, and sent me, away from them. So the later hip hop that turned into what we see now and saw then with the NWAs and stuff like that, groups like that, that was something that, evolved. That's not exactly how hip hop started or sounded originally at all.
I think NWA definitely made an impact. I think they changed the landscape of hip hop. But I also have to say, they weren't the only harsh. It was called reality rap once upon a time. Reality rap was the version of hip hop that wasn't so much for the party scene. It wasn't a part of the conscious scene. It wasn't a part of the ladies love me, ladies come get me scene either. It was a lot harsher. It was what we would later call a little more gully. My king and I often debate of when did the language of bitches and hoes come into hip hop? And I always say to him, I cannot deny Pimpin' Ain't Easy. When Pimpin' Ain't Easy came out, you don't get any clearer than Pimpin' Ain't Easy. Anything goes when it comes to hoes because Pimpin' Ain't Easy. And they were singing it in great jubilee. Drake would probably say, you know what, I'm gonna remake that because they were singing it, and and if you listen to the song, they were having a great time talking about pimpin' hoes. Okay, there was no moment in that song or anywhere on that album that said, wait a minute, guys, we're talking about this particular brand of ladies over here. No, it was said with a very broad pen. Pimping ain't easy. Anything goes when it comes to hoes, okay? That was one of many bangers at the time that was being played. Gotta remember, hip hop wasn't being played on the radio the way it's being played now. There was a specific time slot. You either had to listen to Red Alert,
Midnight, went all the way to midnight.
which was very late at night. You had to have your tape recorder ready, okay? Or shout out to Ralph McDaniels, Video Music Box. Those were the only outlets that we could use to actually hear this genre that was the soundtrack to our lives, because that's what it was, okay? As far as the criminality piece of hip hop, they also put a lot of that on NWA. I say the message is when I fell in love with hip hop, but when I heard The Bridge Is Over by Knowledge Reigns Supreme over everyone, KRS-One, shout out to him. My ears were open. I was sitting on the floor with my best friend, third floor, LV in the building. Put on the red alert because we couldn't play it in the house. So we had to come in the hallway with our little pink boom box and listen to the red alert free ride. So we ran out and bought the album. Who's this guy? Boogie Down Productions. We gotta find out. The album cover of Criminal Minded features what, honey? What's
They're
on it?
holding machine guns, but they were, in that picture, they was trying to mimic Malcolm X.
Okay. It was Scott LaRock,
And
KRS-One, guns, bullets, clips on the table. They're both holding their pieces. Okay? Side by side. The message is clear.
no, honey.
Okay? The message is clear. Okay? I can't put it all on NWA. I can't do that. I can say that there was always an undercurrent of criminality in hip hop. There was always an undercurrent of criminality in the blues. There was always an undercurrent of criminality in music, period. Why? Because the only people, the only groups that had the money to invest in music were those engaged in the underground economy. That's a fact. The underground economy spoon-fed the music industry for years. There was no huge record companies. There was a bootlegger. There was an Italian mafia guy. There was a numbers runner. These are the people that had the expendable cash that wanted to invest in something that they were going to get residuals from. And that's where the undercurrent of criminality comes from in the music industry across the board. In hip hop in particular, I think it was Melly Mel that told the story that when they would do shows at these clubs, it was those brothers who were engaged in the underground economy that would say, hey, I want you to give me a shout out. Make it happen, right? They're the only people at that time. You got to remember, we're talking 1970s, 1980s. Wasn't too many people that were thriving without some kind of underground economy, extra income coming in, okay? 1920s, same thing. When everybody else in Wall Street was jumping out the windows, you know, and going in the bathtub, you know, unaliving themselves, a lot of people made a lot of money with the drugs trade of that time, which was the numbers racket, gambling, and bootlegging. So I can't blame NWA for bringing criminality, raunchiness. I can't blame them for that because that's always in the undercurrent of music.
I don't blame, and for you guys, I don't blame no man. I don't blame no man. I understand that we have all been used by the devil. We have all fell short of the glory of the Lord. With that being said, all flesh, all humans have darkness in them. Some more than others. That's not who we are. We are light beings from the Lord. But when the snake bit us, we were poisoned. And that poison that entered into us was the darkness. And that darkness begins to take over the light being. With that said, so there's nothing that's going to be just all, just crystal pure. So when you speak about, and Slick Rick, Big Daddy Kane,
Treat her like a
Greg,
prostitute.
nice, nice and smooth. Oh my guys, y'all have made this argument so hard for me. Do you hear me, guys? Y'all have made this hard for me. I have defended you guys on so many days about making those songs. But it's interesting. Because do she have a point? Yes, she do. She does. Pimp, anything goes when it comes to hoes because pimping ain't easy. Treat her like a prostitute. Did that open up the door for what later came? That later poison? That poisoned black love? That poisoned our people when it ain't no fun if my homies can't have none? Did that lead to that?
That
You
sounds like
see?
gang rape.
You see? It was gang rape.
That's exactly
But
what it
that
was.
Snoop Dogg,
I know.
a product of NWA. So what I'm saying is this. Yes, hip hop was never 100% clean. You had Melly Mel talking about sniffing coke in songs, you know what I'm saying? White lines go away. That's talking about sniffing coke. You know what I'm saying? So it was never 100% clean. But what I love about the old school was they always told you how it ended. And they never pretended to be the people. They was just telling the story. Coogee Rap was just telling the story. It was gritty, but he wasn't acting like he was the one. He was telling you the story of someone that had lived that life. And in the end, they always died. And then he was always killed. No matter what it was always showed you. You know what I'm saying? And destruction comes out of this. So even when we had that back in the days, it still showed you destruction come out of it. What I would say about Big Daddy Kane and Greg Nice and Smooth and all of them, I would ask you this. Even with those few songs that you just said, did you get a feeling from those individuals that they was men that really lived like that or believed that? Or was they just
Absolutely.
making a song?
In particular, well, who do you want to start with first? Greg Nice and Nice and Smooth, shout out to those brothers. Hope to get them on the platform really soon. They promoted that theme of the player lifestyle. Their music videos, why did we watch them? Most of the guys watched them for the eye candy. All their videos featured eye candy, half naked. Okay? Big Daddy Kane. Let's talk about the album cover, right? He's there in the emperor's chair with a toga, surrounded by the girls who are also in toga, and they're feeding him grapes, right? I mean, it was very clear what the message was, get you some hoes, So I think hip hop started off so misogynistic, like most genres. If you listen to early blues, if you listen to rock, it's misogynistic. This is a men's world. That's why females' introduction into hip hop, shout out to Salt and Pepper, Sha Rock, and all of them, because they answered that. They had to answer it because, oh, Roxanne Shante, how can I forget? They answered those themes of misogyny. They answered it with femme fataleness and lyrics that were putting the boys on notice, like, whoa, okay, we got something to combat with here, but make no mistake, hoes, criminality, misogyny, yeah, it was rampant. And when I saw Kane, when I saw Nice and Smooth, when I saw not so much KRS-One, when I would hear his music, I just felt something revolutionary and possibly dangerous was about to happen, you know. But those other brothers, yeah, they kind of, you know, spoke about boinking and doinking. I mean,
So as I was saying,
that's the
I can't
truth.
defend that, and I won't defend that. There's nothing I could do to defend that. But I don't. This is what I would say about that. Again, I don't blame any man. I think those brothers was used as well. If that was allowed for any moment, that was something that was being used. And did the people that let him do the with the ladies and the grapes and all of that, you know, I would like to have that conversation. Who came up with, was that your idea, brother? And was it, you know, like who, you know, who decided to kind of promote that out there? Was that you guys' idea? Because it's no question that 5 years later, little things that those guys was doing would get exacerbated into what turned into NWA, Snoop Dogg, and not to mention those names that just stick out, because right here on the East Coast, we had that going on too. I mean, Onyx had, which I love
Throw
too.
your
Shout
guns
out
in
to
the air.
Onyx. Yeah, throw your guns in the air. You know what I'm saying? But when I saw throw your guns in the air, did I feel like throwing my gun in the air? Yeah, that's how that goes. So I blame none of them. They're all my brothers. I love them all. Y'all done already seen me with all of them, so you know I have a relationship with all of them. I care about them all, but were they used? Absolutely. Do we need to fix and right our wrongs? Absolutely. You know what I'm saying? Just because they got used don't mean that, you know, it's too late to not make it right and tell these babies and tell these children the truth. Do you know what ain't no fun unless my homie can't have none did to black love and the relationships between couples? I mean, we was together at that time. You know how that was. That was a ugly scene back then. Guys was really meeting girls, taken to the house with friends, you know what I'm saying? And would try to convince them women that, you know, you have to have sex with my homeboys, you know what
I
I'm
don't think there was much convincing. I don't think it was far uglier than that.
And that I wouldn't
I think
know
it was
about.
far uglier than that because we also got to think of the ages of the artists at the time. You know, Kane was a young guy. Snoop was a young guy. You know, and let's not forget NWA, we got Ice Cube, America KKK's Most Wanted. One of the most, wow, revolutionary, pump your fists in the air, we about to take over or do something to rectify the wrongs that have been done to the collective albums. You know, Ice Cube came from that, you know, and he wasn't really speaking that language on that first album, America KKK's Most Wanted. So, or Death Certificate. So I think that there's so much. When we hear the drill music now, those are babies. Those are our babies, you know. And I think a major difference, how you were saying Coogee Rap was telling a story, Big was telling a story, Pac told stories. Our drill artists are living those stories. And I think that is a major shift in music. You know, when we have a young man who's talking about spinning the block and the block actually gets spun and there's a funeral a few days later and then there's a song to talk about it, that's a little different than what we were doing in our time. That's very, very different. It's a little scary. I'm fearful of all the indictments that are gonna come out of that. I think that's going to be the next wave of the massive incarceration of the next generation.
I think in our generation, New York in particular, senseless killing is what we did not have. You know what I'm
No,
saying?
that wasn't common.
Senseless killing was, if you, in our generation, showed that you was a little bit out of control, showed that you was a little bit too much of a knucklehead, and you was maybe moving around and robbing and acting scary to the wrong people, you disappeared very fast.
Because you was messing up the money.
Disappeared very fast. So one of the things that happened when NWA took over is, and the movies, the gang they put on the screen and flashed around the world the scene of these gangs, these wild gangs. Some way, somehow, that trickled down to our babies, you know, right here in the East Coast, New York in particular. So now that brought in these gangs, and now we are seeing, in particular in the Bronx, Harlem, you know, Brooklyn. Now we're starting to see this senseless violence. But again, that was all ushered in through what I would agree what Special Ed said, NWA. And not just saying that thing. There was a letter. So when we was on My Expert Opinion, there was a letter that I was made aware about. And I think you've heard of the letter, you know, and it had everything to do with what you were speaking about earlier, which is dynamic. So there was a guy that was supposed to be in the industry, and he was invited to a meeting some years and years ago. And did you hear about this? And when he went to the meeting, it was all the top executives and everybody there. And the meeting was about them investing into the jails and the penitentiaries and how they was gonna make all of this good money and how they was gonna, you know that they was gonna flip the investment is that it was gonna be through rap music and that they was no longer going to produce any more groups that spoke positivity, you know, that did know the brand Nubians and all of them had to be eliminated. That they only was going to promote the albums and the artists that taught gang violence, black on black crime, selling drugs, disrespecting women. Only that was the thing of the meeting. They said from what they studied that if they did this, and they introduced this into the communities and did it through music, for sure, the penitentiaries and the jails will fill up and they will all get rich. This is a big thing. It's on the internet. So that group that was in that meeting used NWA as the poster boy of that movement, and it just trickled down from there because they said in the meeting it was agreed that they wasn't going to promote all pushed out in the forefront of hip hop. No more groups like Brand Nubian, Public Enemy, that was over. It's ironic of the story that this person is telling because we all know, me and you know, not us all, me and you know that something happened to those groups in our generation. Me and you know beyond all people that, yeah, we went from, self-destruction to a couple years later to, it's about the money and selling drugs and the flashy stuff and, all of, and then, if that was the East Coast and then down south and on the West Coast, it was, the gang stuff. And that eventually became a part of here too.
I don't, that is true, but also a lot of money was being made at that time too. So when you hear the music of the Roaring 20s, right before the stock market crash, the music was about champagne, furs, parties, and living the highest life because there was so much money being made by young people. When the young people are the ones generating the money, the arts is going to reflect that. The fashion is going to reflect that. The language is going to reflect that. And I think after NWA, we were leaving the impoverishedness of the early 80s, crack hits around 86, 87. So now we have all those babies, our hip hop babies, our generation, making money, serious money. No rules. No, the only rule was keep your mouth closed and try not to go to jail. You wasn't even going to jail for a long time. There weren't cameras on every corner recording everything. Real people involved in underground economy didn't even take pictures back then. So the music was a reflection of that. And I think that's what we saw. And when that started to decline, when indictments started to take place, where entire crews, because it wasn't so much about the gangs. On the West Coast, yes. But here on the East Coast, it was crews. Your crew was an ensemble of brothers and a few sisters that were a part of the money-making machine and would stand tall with one another and go to war for each other if need be. It was about the crew love. I didn't really see the emergence of the gangs until the disruption of some of those really, really lucrative organizations, those underground economy organizations. And I started hearing about it in the prisons, particularly here in New York. From what I've researched, that's where the emergence of the Bloods really started, was because everybody was either just regular in the street economy or a part of the nation of gods and earths or just crewed up. We wouldn't really, and if your crew had a name, it was just so your crew could stand out from the other crews that were also making money, So I can't really say that gang culture became really prevalent in New York until those major, major indictments came down and we lost so many brothers to incarceration, particularly during the Giuliani and Pataki administrations, which pretty much cleared the street.
Honey, I remember the year. I remember the year. So, we all know, I've been back and forth, in Virginia. So it was one of the times I was visiting, coming to check on everything from VA. And I went to Drew Hamilton Projects. I would say this was 1998, 1999. It wasn't 2000 yet. So I'm leaning 98 into 99. So I go see Corey Love.
Shout out.
You know, Drew Hamilton, go see, you know, my best dude, you know, visiting him. And we sitting in the projects, you know, and we sitting out there and we just talking, you know, chilling, doing what we do. And I see a little fight happen in the park with the little kids. It's just like little kids, you know, a couple of little kids start fighting. So Corey, you know, the kid run off. One of the kids went off or something, but it wasn't nothing big, just like a little, you know, kids fight, you know. So Corey says to me, it's time to go. We need to go, you know, to, you know, get ready to go back in the building or, you know, leave the park. So I'm like, you know, why we gotta leave the park? You know what I'm saying? He said, because the Bloods is coming. And I bust out laughing. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, the Bloods, this is New York. What are you talking about, the Bloods? And I heard one of the kids making a noise, and that's when Corey was actually saying that. I guess it was a calling. You know what I'm saying? Some noise, I guess they make, you know, and I'm just laughed it off. But then the next thing I know, from everywhere, it was a bunch of little kids with bats, bottles, bricks, and it was like, I mean, maybe 50. It was a mob of children with weapons and violence just out of nowhere, and they came running in the park. And what made me so pissed, I'm looking at the kids.
Pissed.
I was pissed because I'm looking at these 50 kids, and it's about 10 guys my age.
With them?
With them. And I'm like, you're directing these kids. What are you doing? What's going on here? So Corey said, oh, we got to get out of here now. So, you know, let's go for our safety. So I got up to leave, and the kids is running by vicious. They running by with the bats and the bottles and the stuff, and they looking, and the first thing I did was a prayer inside myself, because I said, God, I don't want to kill no kids. I don't want to kill these babies. So they got to be careful. Don't, you know, be Superman over there. I don't, you know, don't be, you know, I don't do that. You know what I'm saying? Be whatever you want to be. Keep that away from me. Keep that away from the queen. And you could, you know, I'm quite all right with that. But yeah, you know, I'm like, you know, I don't want to kill these kids. You know what I'm saying? They running with weapons, and it's a whole bunch of them. So it's not like, you know, you can't take them as a threat. And they was around 12, 11. So now, fast forward, these are the dudes now that, you know, that was 98. They the ones that grew up in that, you know, and that was like, you know, and again, you know, unfortunate thing, I feel that what Special Ed said it wasn't a group in particular. It was the movement that was put out for our people. We are all victims, and we need to recognize that. You know, it's not about pointing the finger and all of that, but yeah, we need to recognize that, and all of us as a people need to right our wrongs. Now, with that said, moving right along, I want to talk about something else as we end, and something that's very important that my queen will be able to give me a lot of clarity on things that I don't understand, you know, and because she's a professional. On the mental health. Mental health is something that is obviously plaguing not only New York, not only hip hop, it's plaguing the world. It's something that a real serious issue that I think that we should have a discussion on. And I think there should be a discussion. This mental health thing. I don't understand. What are the main psychological points of the mental health, like narcissists, and what are the things, what are the things, what are that the people, what are that you as a professional would call? Because I don't even know the names. You could tell me and educate the world.
I think narcissism is just being beaten to death. I think people are throwing that term out to describe basically just a very easy, understood phenomenon of someone just doesn't give a shit about you. I, I think there's, oh, she's a narcissist. Oh, he's a narcissist. No, they just don't care as much about you as you fantasize that they do. Because a true narcissist, if they're clinically diagnosed with narcissism, they're able to function and thrive in the world, but there is a numbness when it comes to socialization. They don't really identify with others. It would be very difficult for them to engage in any kind of relationship, even with a pet. So I think that idea of narcissism is being thrown around just tremendously too much to just describe men and women who basically are telling you in so many ways, I don't care about you. Pay attention when they're saying it. You don't need to call them a narcissist. Just know they just don't care. I think the most common anxiety is definitely one of the most common.
That's a mental thing?
Yes, anxiety, because it's okay to be nervous. There's different scenarios and different experiences that would naturally make us a little uneasy and a little worried and nervous. With anxiety disorder, it starts to show up in psychosomatic ways. Trembling of the hands, overeating, consistently needing to do something with your, as a distraction, chronic smoking, seeking a outer soothing method. The growth in marijuana use, people have always smoked marijuana, but I think the way marijuana is being used now and the frequency of it and how it's spread across age groups and demographics, socioeconomic status included, I believe that's because we as Americans, and particularly those who are living in a city, where there is a lot of strain, there's a lot of pressure, and the pace of living is extremely accelerated. There's a lot of anxiety that comes with that. And you don't have, anxiety is, you don't think you're nervous. You may not even recognize you're nervous. You can't stop tapping your leg. Your hands tremble when you're supposed to be still. You constantly need something either to chew on, to smoke. Oral satisfaction comes from infancy, you know. That's the first way you soothe the baby, is through oral satisfaction. You give them a bottle, you give them a pacifier, AKA the bobo. So we see a lot of that. Also, I think a not so common, but people throw this around all the time, is sociopathism. You know, oh, he's a sociopath. Oh, she's a sociopath. If you've actually met a sociopath, a clinically diagnosed sociopath, the hairs on the back of your neck would stand up. A sociopath can morph themselves into whatever you need them to be. A sociopath, I heard a story about a particularly Harlem famous sociopath, which I will not name. This Harlem all-star, okay, You know what his favorite thing to do at the club was? He would watch everybody down champagne, drinking. He would keep buying bottles, buying bottles, buying bottles, right? Now, in his glass, it looks like it's champagne too. It's ginger ale. Because the highlight of his evening was watching the closing of the eyes of everyone around him. That's a sociopath. And that's a term that's oh, he's a sociopath. If you, I don't, this, it's such a rare phenomenon. But I think because we have so many movies and there are so many characters that we've fallen in love with that have sociopathic tendencies, that we're now putting that label on people who really just may have some social inadequacies, okay? Because if you actually sat down with a sociopath, know that you are in danger because they cannot feel empathy. They cannot feel love. They cannot feel compassion. They are fully the full embodiment of antisocial behavior. And I think anxiety is definitely what's plaguing the population right now, and particularly post-COVID.
What about the people like the drug addicts? What's wrong? What mental
Oh, it's
thing?
so many things, so many
What's the
things.
main ones they suffer from? Because I know so many people out there that have family members that are addicted to drugs, and been addicted to drugs 20, 30 years, 40 years. You know, we all have family members like that. Our family members, are they suffering from something clinical too, or is they just want to be drug addicts?
Depression is real. Depression is real.
That's another clinical
Yes,
form
depression is
of a
very
mental
real.
imbalance.
Absolutely. Depression can lead you to engage in a lot. I think there's a lot of misconceptions about depression. I think a lot of us just think that means a prolonged sadness, but it's a lot more than that. A person that suffers from manic depression has highs and lows. They're not always on the plane of just feeling down in the dumps. There's points where they feel tremendously happy and tremendously excited and tremendously engaged in the world. And then there's a crash, kind of like a sugar rush, like a sugar rush. Addiction also clinically is a disorder. After the brain has been exposed to outside chemicals that shift the way it processes information and how it also funnels feelings and emotions, it's very difficult to get the brain to regulate without that.
So
So it's really hard.
that's interesting. So all right, so when we see people and we say that's a crazy person, what do they suffer from?
They could suffer from a lot of things.
But what would they suffer from to where they're just considered across the board crazy? Is there a different level of crazy that would be clinically, described? Because
Can't
we
say
know people
crazy.
that
Can't say crazy.
you can't say crazy. So
You
what's
can't
the?
say
I don't know.
crazy.
You're educating me and a lot of people, honey. So what would be the professional word then?
Mental illness.
Mental illness.
Mentally unwell.
And so why can't you say crazy?
I mean, we come from a generation where you would
Is
just
that, I
say
mean,
crazy.
I mean, I don't know.
We come from that
is
time, but
crazy not,
crazy is politically incorrect now.
how come? Is that
I
not
don't
what the
know.
word
Popular
means?
culture is everyone's sensitive now.
But is that not what it means, that word?
I mean, crazy is crazy. I mean, there's no getting around crazy, but we now say mentally unstable, mentally imbalanced, clinically unwell. Everything is pacified now. But the great thing about mental health right now, mental health is being recognized as a part of primary health. Once upon a time, there was a lot of resistance to seeking out counseling, seeking out therapy, and goodness forbid, medication to regulate certain impulses. But I think people are more open to it. I think the discussions are happening more frequently with doctors, with teachers, with all the professional helpers that are in the world. So what we're seeing on the streets now, and particularly in New York, is because the need is so great and there's just not enough resources out there to really address the need. Unfortunately, there's just not. The need's too tremendous.
I was always interested in this topic because, we see so much of this mental health, and this is something that the scriptures also as well speak about. So I know everything that you explain on a clinical side. Now, when we deal with it on the spiritual side and we deal with the scriptures, according to the scriptures, these are demons. These are actual demons. So there's a man that cleans his house, right?
Mm.
And inside his house, he has one demon. And he cleans his house from that one demon. But if he doesn't clean that house right, that one demon goes and bring back 7 more and jump him. So this is all scripture. So what the scriptures are saying that all of that stuff is different demons that come upon us. And that there's only one person. There's only one, I'm not going to say person, there's only one that could set us free from the demons. And that is Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior. Those who try to clean their house without doing it in that way are the ones that the demon goes back and returns with more demons and jump them. And the scripture say that person ends up more worse than they was in the beginning stage. So I think that's very interesting to wrap it up, that the scripture on that side is saying that these are actual demons that come on us. And that goes back to, we wrestle against no flesh, but principalities and high places, that the enemy is no man. The enemy is the evil. It's the devil. It's Satan. It's the prince of darkness. And we again get infected with that darkness as light beings. Some infected with more darkness than others. In order for us to address true mental health, it is no way that you can't. Let me explain something. There's no way that you could take Jesus Christ out of anything. I need to make that clear, because I know it's a lot of stages in a lot of people's lives that they thinking that they could somehow leave that out the equation. Can't be left out the equation. Jesus is the answer, and he's the hope, he's the truth, the way, and he is the light. What do you have to say about that? I need to wrap it up.
Amen.
And with that, we have such amazing things coming to you guys. I will be back on the pulpit to speak with you guys. We have great shows with guests coming with you guys. We just have a lot of amazing things that we have coming to you.
Thank you for all who have subscribed. We appreciate your comments. We read your comments. And we are so thankful for all of you guys who have supported and taken the time to watch as we are growing and glowing.
And again, Queen, I can't do any of this without you. You were so beautiful tonight. I just want to say
Oh,
that.
thank you.
You look so lovely tonight, you know.
It's because of you.
Yeah, it was because of the power that God has blessed on me to share with my family. And the light that he gives me, I'm going to do my best to shine to keep us in the light.
And in the light shall we stay.